What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report, episode 7. All right, where I discuss boxing news of the past week or so. Now, this will be my first Wave Report since that I've done since the new year, right, in 2023. So I'm a little bit behind. So there's a few topics that I'm gonna bring up that's about a week or so old, but I want to still discuss it. I just want to cover it real quick before we move on. So we have a lot of topics to brush through today. Mainly the Anthony Joshua and training in America and who's this new coach going to be. So we'll discuss that later in the video. But there's a lot of little topics that I want to cover before we get to that point. All right, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification button as well, so you'll be alerted whenever I drop new content. And smash the like video if you like the content. Share the video if you can as well. And follow me on all social media platforms at Boxingwave 10. All right, so before we start with the news, just wanted to remind you guys that we do have a card this weekend. It's going to be on ESPN. Top rank card is going to be between heavyweights F.A. Ajagba. He's going to be facing off against Steven Shaw. And that's going to be, again, it's going to be on ESPN, but it's going to be at, I think the main card starts at 10 p.m. All right, so it's going to be kind of late, but I should be able to do live commentary with you guys. Hopefully, I can cover the entire card, but I'm definitely going to be home on time to cover the fight. So check me out then. I will be here at that time. All right. So let's talk boxing news. Let's start out with Joseph Parker and his return. He's going to be fighting on the undercard of Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Smith next Saturday on the 21st of January. The following Saturday, he's going to be on the undercard making his return since his loss to Joe Joyce. All right, his first knockout loss. And he's going to be facing off against Jack Massey. All right. Look, I've never seen Jack Massey fight, so I can't give you my opinion on him, but I don't see him a problem. I mean, the guy's only lost one fight. I've never seen him, so I can't give you an opinion on what I think of the fight, but this is supposed to be a tune-up fight, and I don't have a problem with him tuning up after getting stopped for the first time in your career. With that being said, Joseph Parker has expressed that he's interested in having a Dillian Whyte rematch. Now, that's a fight that I've always liked because of the fact that the first fight was close. He actually came back and almost stopped Whyte in a final round. All right, so he finished off very, very strong against Dillian Whyte. And being that the both of them have taken knockout losses recently, I think that fight is pretty good fight. Now, I know if Dillian Whyte has the opportunity to fight Anthony Joshua in a rematch, of course he will take it. All right. But if not, I would love to see Dillian Whyte against Joseph Parker in a rematch because of the way that first fight went. Dillian Whyte, they both actually exchanged knockouts or knockdowns during the fight. Whyte scored a knockdown or two against Parker earlier in the fight, and Parker scored a knockdown late in the fight, almost stopping Whyte. Whyte was able to survive the final round and get through it. So I'm curious with the amount of experience they both have and gained over the years since their first fight. I'm curious to see who will win the second fight. Some may argue that they're not even in their prime anymore. Neither one of them may not be. All right, but we'll see if they were to fight. But I would like the fight. I would like to fight at some point, and I think it would be a crucial fight for the both of them because let's say if Dillian Whyte is not able to secure an Anthony Joshua rematch, and he does take a Joseph Parker fight, I think a Parker fight or a loss to him would be detrimental for him in his career, and his name, because he's able to secure big bags for a fight, big purses for a fight with his name being in there with so many fighters. And same with Joseph Parker. I mean, he has a name for himself, but I'll be very interested in seeing that fight. I would love to see that fight. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. because at this point, there's a lot of new, fresh, up-and-coming fighters that are younger, that are undefeated, that is going to be gunning for these guys with the name, the outgoing guys with the names like Wilder, like Andy Ruiz, like Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury. These are guys that have been around for a while now at this point. And, White and Parker, Parker, a former champion, White, a former, or he's been a top contender for many years at this point. These guys were top 10 heavyweights for a long time. And now the new crop of young heavyweight fighters, two of them fighting this weekend, F.A. Ajaba and Stephen Shaw, they're running and gunning for these guys. You got Hergovich, you got Joe Joyce, who's not really young, but doesn't have as many professional fights. He hasn't been around as a pro that long. But these guys are running out of time. You got Frank Sanchez. You got a lot of fighters. You got Fabio Wardley. These guys are going to be knocking on the door of these former top guys like Derek Chisholm or just looking to get a big win over their name. So these guys got to do what they got to do. This fight will probably still generate a lot of money, and it's a fight that I would love to see. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch. I know White didn't look so great in his last performance, even though he got the win. And Joseph Parker lost in his last fight. So the tuna fight is cool. I'll let you guys know how I feel about this fight as soon as I get some time to do some film study on Jack Massey. I haven't had any time yet to do that, but I don't have a problem with this fight. All right. So that's my thoughts on that. So let's move to the next topic at hand. You got Adrian Broner. And this was totally random, but it's not something that he hasn't said before. We know that he's due to fight Ivan Redkach on BLK Prime pretty soon, right? He got like I think he secured some kind of 3-fight deal over there. Now, Broner's been very vocal. He's been very vocal about Al Heyman and the PBC. He's been calling out Regis Prograis at 140, a fight that I really would love to see. I'm actually shocked that Broner even wants that fight. But he's called out Mayweather for an exhibition. And this is not the first time he's called out Floyd. But to be honest, the only reason why I wanted to bring this up is because, since Mayweather is doing exhibitions against fighters that we don't care for, I actually wouldn't mind if he actually took this fight. Because I think Broner, even with all the losses and the inactivity, Broner at where it appears to be past his prime, and Floyd being 45 years old, I actually believe that the fight would make more sense now. If Broner can secure a couple of decent wins and they can find the money to pay Floyd Mayweather to take that fight as an exhibition, I actually don't mind seeing that fight. Because that fight makes more sense now more than ever, being that Broner is past his prime, but still young. And Floyd Mayweather is older and would make the fight more competitive now than it did, 5-10 years ago when Floyd was still kind of active in the sport. And Broner was like having his issues with Floyd and saying, I'll fight big bro. I'll fight big bro. Now that we're past that and we're doing exhibitions, everybody's doing exhibitions. Manny Pacquiao is doing exhibitions. Guys like Cotto and Marquez has entertained doing exhibitions. Tyson Roy Jones has done exhibitions. So if everybody's going to be doing exhibitions, this is actually an exhibition I wouldn't mind seeing. And I think the buildup of it would be pretty entertaining. I could see them getting personal with each other and all that, and the presser and everything like that. I could see some entertainment leading up to that fight. So if they're going to do an exhibition, I wouldn't mind it. I really wouldn't mind it. I know Pacquiao is also trying to run a rematch back with Floyd Mayweather exhibition style, so that's also realistic. I think when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, I think anything is realistic if you're willing to pay the man and if he has a good chance of beating you. All right, so I think with Floyd, I think he would do it, as long as it goes on, as long as it's under his terms, he'll do it. But if the money is right, he'll do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if this happens. Broner needs to really focus up though, because even though I'm not expecting much from Ivan Redkach, Broner hasn't looked impressive in a while, if he's very inactive. And if he is not, he's had mental health issues and all of this stuff, a lot of things going on outside of the ring. So if he's not fully focused for the fight, he could either lose the fight or get another gift where you want to look impressive at this point, especially if you're going to keep getting these huge bags in order to fight. I don't know how it's going to work with BLK Prime if he doesn't perform against Ivan Redkach. I know they offered him a lot of money, but are they going to stick to the deal if he doesn't perform, or if the numbers aren't well too, because that could also be a factor. All right, so let's move on to the next topic, and it's going to be Ioka Gamboa. Now, if you haven't heard, it was reported that he was involved in a fatal car accident where he was the driver. Okay. Now, I don't know all of the details, but what I did read was that he was detained by police. And as far as I think the most recent article that I read, which was about 5 or 6 days ago, he's still being detained by the police, in Cuba. All right. This happened in Cuba. And from what I read, they said that he wasn't under the influence by no drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But I also read that according to Cuba law, all right, you are going to be detained for days after the accident during the investigation, just only simply because of the fact that it was a fatal car accident. So it's automatic. Now, if that's true, that's ridiculous, because if it's a car accident, I know someone died from it, and that's sad that happened, but if there's no proof of any foul play here or any reckless driving or anything like that, why is he being detained? From what I read, that he could bail himself out. Maybe that's a money play where it's Gamboa. They know he's earned a lot of money boxing here in America over the years, and maybe they're just detaining him so he can just fold and get bailed out. Or I really don't know. I don't know why they're detaining him for days, or if he is out, maybe he is out by now. But if he was detained for 4 or 5 days after the accident, what for? What is the reason behind that? Why are you being held in jail if you weren't drunk or you weren't using on any kind of drug or anything like that? Now, if they can prove that he was driving recklessly, maybe he was racing in a fast car and he hit this person, a jail, maybe they would jaywalk or just walking across the street and you hit someone, and there's witnesses saying that he was driving recklessly. And I don't know if they got cameras out there. I mean, I've been to Cuba before, and they're not the most technology advanced country. I've been there. But with that being said, I don't know what's going on out with this situation, but it's pretty sad to hear. I don't really want Gamboa to be fighting on an elite level anymore. The last time I seen him getting knocked out by Pitbull Cruz, and even before that, he seemed to just kept getting knocked out and stopped and getting embarrassed in fights. But I love Gamboa. At one point he was one of my favorite fighters to watch when he was more like a prospect, and the earlier championship level years, he was definitely one of my favorite guys, and he was like, a pound for pound ish type of fighter. You know what I'm saying? So I hate to hear this news, but hopefully all things work out for him, and hopefully he can get out of jail if he's still in there. And hopefully everything goes well. I don't know what's it like for him to be back in Cuba, because it seems like every fighter from there seems to do everything they can to escape from there, but when they do, I'm sure some of them go back, but going back, you probably got to be extremely cautious, especially the way you move out there, because, once you go and return and something happens like this, you don't want to get held there for anything, you know. And hope I wish him luck. During this situation, this tough time. All right. So the next topic, Kazuto Ioka, all right, is being mandated to defend his WBO title against Junto Nakatani, who's gonna move up and face him. I don't know if Junto moved up yet, but he's gonna be moving up, and Ioka is gonna have to defend his title against this kid. Now, if you haven't seen Junto Nakatani fight, he's a southpaw fighter. He's extremely explosive, all right, and he's a very good technician. This is not the same type of fight as Joshua Franco. I look at this as being a more difficult fight. Some of you thought that Franco won the fight. You know, I thought it was a draw. I'd seen the fight after the fight and after the fact, and you know, I did address it in one of my more recent videos. I thought it was actually a draw. I think I scored it 6-6 or something like that, or maybe edging it for Ioka or something like that. But this is a different type of fight, you know. And even the Kosai Tanaka fight, Kosai was very explosive coming up, but he wasn't on a technical level. You know, I don't think he had the same boxing IQ as Nakatani does. This is a more difficult fight for Ioka, you know. And as far as the timing is concerned, if they are going to fight next, and yes, I told you guys I wanted Ioka to fight Juan Francisco Estrada, you know, or, you know, want to fight one of the other legends in the division. You know, I've been wanting him to fight Ioka to fight for Estrada or Chocolatito. That would have been great. We know that, and I guess I could speak on that too when it comes to Nonito Donaire. But if he has to defend his title, you know, if he's being forced to fight his mandatory, that's a very, very tough mandatory. And I know that Junto is the one that's coming up, but he's very, very skilled, you know. And this is different from Franco and Kosai Tanaka. You know, I think Junto is on a different level when it comes to defense. He brings the explosiveness as well and the power and that southpaw style, you know what I'm saying? He's very crafty, but he's explosive and powerful at the same time. Tough fight for Ioka. Tough schedule for Ioka. Again, I would love to see him fight Estrada, you know, and unify. But if he has to have, you know, or I would have liked to see the Franco rematch. You know, I would have liked to see that too. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen. You know, it looks like he's going to have to defend his title against a mandatory. All right. And speaking on that, Nonito Donaire, he's looking to come down and fight to 115 and fight Juan Francisco Estrada because he wants to be a 5-weight division champion. Now, from what I think I know, Donaire was a champion at 112. Let me check. You know, I don't even need to check. All right. I think he was a champion at 112, 118, 122, and 126. Correct me if I'm wrong. All right. I think he skipped 115. He either skipped 115 or he's just never been a champion there. All right. A full champion. All right. It's been a while, so I don't remember. But it's not that I have a problem with this. You know, it just, with me, when it comes to Donaire and been following him for so many years, Donaire has gone up as far as 126 and won titles, right? And it seemed like, you know, 126, he just wasn't successful. He lost to Nicholas Walters. He lost to Carl Frampton as well, you know. And he seemed to have gone back down to 122. I think he took a loss down at 122. And then he went down to 118, and he did well in this one at 118 until he ran into the monster in Nue. And now it seems like he's going back down to 115 to fight Estrada. Now, if he can make weight, right, and doesn't come in overweight, then I really don't have a problem. I mean, that's been my stance on this channel for many, many years. You know, I don't really argue about the weight building or the size advantage. If you can make weight, if you can make the weight, you can make the weight. You know, size is an advantage though. I think a little bit I have an issue with it only because it seems like whenever he doesn't have success, he moves back down. You know, if he was a guy like that was moving up and down for certain opportunities, and he's actually being successful against the top tier fighters he's facing, I wouldn't really mind it. Like I know Amanda Serrano for a fact, she's moved up and down throughout different weights through her career. You know what I'm saying? And for the most part, she's been very successful. Whereas Donaire, it seems like he's going up, and then whenever he takes a loss, it seems like he goes down another division. And at this point, being that you were a champion at 126, going back down to fight Estrada, who's never fought above 115. I just don't know. I don't know if I like that. Something just doesn't sit right with me. Again, I'm not bashing him. I just feel that he has to keep going down in order to remain competitive. When you fought, let me just pull up his resume because I just want to be sure about my stance on this. And again, it's not that I'm bashing him or discrediting it. Well, I am in a way. I am kind of in a way because I like him, and I've never discredited anything he's done in his career, but I just have to be honest here. And I'm looking, he's been up and down. Like he started pro as a 115. He's gone down to 112. The first Victor Jr. fight was all the way down at flyweight, at 112. Okay, so he was down there for a while. And where did he win his first title? He had an IBF. Okay, so he did win a title at 112. But seems here he didn't win one at 115. All right. He was interim champ. All right, but he didn't win at 115, not a major title. Right? And then he went up to 122. All right, and eventually lost to Rigo, moved up to 126, had that rematch against Victor Jr. I remember I didn't cover it because they didn't have live at the time, but I remember doing reviews on the second Victor Jr. fight back in 2013. He fought some good fighters, and then he moved up to 126 and fought. He got stopped by Nicholas Walters, which was an excellent fight for the time that it lasted. Went back down to 122 again, fought Jesse Magdaleno, fought Carl Frampton at 126, who Carl was also at 122 before that. And then he went all the way back down to 118. All right, so, and then now he's going back down to 115. He said he wants to fight one of the legends. Now if he can't secure the Estrada fight, I'm sure he'd be willing to fight Roman Gonzalez if he's interested. So, I don't know. I guess he's bounced around. So to be fair, he has bounced around a bit, but it just seems like in the most recent years, it seemed like he has unsuccess. He's been unsuccessful in major fights, and he's gone back down. But I guess it's because he's 40 years old. It's towards the end of his career. I guess he wants another big name on his resume. I don't think he cares to now that Inoue is going up. What I would have liked from Donaire to see if he could become undisputed at 118. Now, losing Inoue because he beat everybody else at 118. I personally would have liked that more. But him coming down and fighting Estrada and Roman Gonzalez, and those guys, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about that. Just share your thoughts on that. All right, so let's move to the next topic at hand. What else we got here? All right, so when it comes to 126, we have Isaac Dobe is going to fight Mark Masayo. It's going to be for a title eliminated with the WBC. So they're pretty much setting up like a four-way tournament. And depending on what happens with Stephen Fulton, because that situation is weird. We know that there was news that reported a couple months back that Stephen Fulton was going to move up from 122, and he's actually still catching backlash with that right now as we speak. Stephen Fulton's going to move up to 126 and run the fight back with Brandon Figueroa. All right, they're going to have a rematch, and that was going to be for the interim WBC title, which was held by Ray Vargas, but he's moving up to 130 now to fight Oshaki Foster for that title at 130. So originally, Stephen Fulton and Brandon Figueroa was going to fight for that title, for that interim title for the WBC. And then now, Isaac Dope is going to fight Mark Masayo for the final eliminator. And basically, this is going to be like a 4-man tournament. So whoever wins between Fulton and Figueroa in their rematch, and whoever wins between Dobe and Masayo, those two are going to fight each other, and that will be the new WBC champion. Okay? So this is how it's all going to work out. Actually, I don't have a problem with any of these fights. Love to see Isaac Dobe. You know, I think he's improved over the years. He's actually worked on just becoming more of a boxer. He's had some pretty close fights, some pretty debatable wins on his resume. But I like the fight between Masayo. Masayo is very explosive, but very reckless. You know, makes a lot of mistakes in there. But I like the fight. I think this is a good fight, good matchup, and I also think the Fulton Brandon Figueroa fight is great. But you know my preference in that. I would have loved for Fulton to hold on to his titles and fight Inoue as he had moved up. That's what my preference would have been. You know, I would have loved to see that fight because I actually think Fulton would be Inoue's toughest opponent to date, you know, even more so than Donaire. I know Donaire has done a lot of things over his year. I know he's a 4-division champion and all that, but I think Fulton at his current age, at this current time, would be more of a challenge for Inoue than Nonito Donaire at, you know, 40 or 38 in the first time that they fought. You know, I think that Fulton right now would be a tougher challenge, and I would have preferred to see that. But this whole tournament thing, I'm cool with that. I don't have a problem with that. All 4 good fighters, you know, former champions in there. All of them has held the title at some point. All right, so I don't have a problem with this 4-man tournament at 126. All right, the only thing I want from at 126 really is some kind of unification. So, you know, and they just actually, I meant to put that on this list and I didn't, but it just was announced that Mauricio Lara is going to be facing Lee Wood. All right. And I love that fight. I actually wasn't expecting Lee Wood to take that fight. You know, I know they were trying to work on a Leo Santa Cruz fight, you know, but I actually think that's a good fight too, you know, and that's going to be in February 18 in Nottingham. All right, out in the UK. So Lee Wood is gonna defend his title in the WBA. But at some point, maybe not now, but some point, hopefully this year, hopefully we can get some unification at featherweight. You know, it's just been way too long, and it seems like I'll say it, it's been like a pit stop for fighters that's going up from 122 to 126. They'll stay there, have a couple fights, and then move up. You know, you got Luis Lopez, who is now the IBF champ. You have Leo Santa Cruz, I think he recently vacated the title, all right? And Lee Wood has been elevated to the WBA champ. And he's going to fight Mauricio Lara, right? So Leo Santa Cruz is finally out the picture, which is great. So that's a good start. And then Ray Vargas is moving up. But we need to get 2 fights here in order to get who the full champ at WBC. After, you know, Ray Vargas. Well, there will be an interim champ if Fulton and Brandon Figueroa fight each other. All right. And then you have Emmanuel Navarrete, who I believe is going up as well to 130. All right. So, Emmanuel Navarrete is going up to fight for the super feather at 130 for the WBO title that's vacated. All right, so that's vacant right now. So it's a lot of mess going on between 126 and 130, but hopefully these guys can get these fights, and after we get the winners, hopefully we can get some more unifications here, you know, because there's a lot of talent at 126. They just don't seem to fight each other. You know, a lot of guys are you know, moving around, doing too much funny stuff at 126, and I'm not feeling it. All right, so real quick, Devin Haney. It was announced by Bob Arum sometime last week that Devin Haney and Lomachenko is made. It is agreed on. It's just that they're just still working on the date and venue, which is great news, you know, because I was a little concerned, especially when Devin Haney came out and said something about he wanted to fight in March. He's not sticking around at 135. He doesn't want it to get drawn out. And he said that Top Rank was trying to make the fight happen all the way in May. He wants to happen as soon as March. And I agree with him. You know, I think, why are we holding things up? Let's have the fight. We know that Lomachenko wanted the fight. We know that Haney, he's been wanting to fight. So, you know, let's make the fight happen. A lot of the fans want the fight. There's a lot of Loma fans that wanted this fight for a long time. Whether they want it now, or, you know, I don't know if they want it now, but a lot of fans wanted this fight for a long time. A lot of Haney fans has wanted this fight for a long time. Let's forget about all the franchise stuff. I mean, let's not forget about it, but let's, like, the franchise title talk, that's done now. You know, Haney is now undisputed. Let's get that fight going. You know, we know who's A-side. We know who has the titles. Let's make the fight. There's going to be no excuses. If Haney agrees to fight at 135, you know, make the weight. You know, make the weight. Fight Lomachenko. And when the fight is over, we don't want to hear any excuses. We don't want to hear, if Loma wins the fight, we don't want to hear anything about Haney being drained. And if Haney wins the fight, we don't want to hear anything about Loma being past it or being too small. So I already know what excuses we're going to hear. I'm not trying to hear it, you know, because you guys have been talking about this for years. And now this fight is, Haney is staying at 135. And even though he looked drained before the fight, he looked good on the night of the fight. All right? So months has passed. He's making the choice to stick around. If he's choosing to stick around, make the weight, you know, because don't come in, you know, overweight on the scales. Then you get stripped, you know, and then now, if you are going to continue fighting Loma, now people are going to say, well, if you win, it's because you were too big. You know, don't want to hear any excuses. I want everything to work out. I want the fight to go down, because I'm just tired of people talking about who's this, who's that, who's this. This is a fight that we should be having. This is a fight that we deserve. All right? And that's my thoughts on that, really. All right. So moving down the list, we got Stanionis and Virgil Ortiz, who the WBA, it seems like it was like maybe a week after the WBA announced that these two fighters were going to face each other in March. Golden Boy pretty much won the purse bid, the purse split, and the fight will be on DAZN, even though Stanionis has been fighting with the PBC. Stanionis is going to go over to fight Ortiz Jr. and defend his WBA regular title against Ortiz Jr. All right. And it's going to be rescheduled now to April because Stanionis, while training, has some pain in his body. And it come to find out he might have had appendicitis, and they had to go into emergency surgery to remove his appendix. And it sucks. That's an actual random thing that could happen. You know, almost happened to me a couple years back. And yeah, he's going to be out. So they postponed the fight until late April, you know. So, I mean, at this point, you know, I know people have been talking, because I've heard a couple other channels talking about this, and I think people started talking, and even some of the reporters have talked about who will Ortiz fight in place of Stanionis. I don't think there will be a replacement. You know, I think Ortiz want to take this fight because it'll put him in position to fight for a title, you know, in another sanctioning body. So, I don't think that this fight is going to be stopped completely. I think that they're just going to reschedule it for late April. And I think everything works out for both parties. You know, I think Stanionis and this surgery is something that's not going to delay him for months. They only pushed it up on their doctor's orders an additional month. And I think that's realistic. I think that's very realistic. I mean, it's a surgery where it's a very common surgery to get your appendix removed. And, after some recovery time, Stanionis should probably be back in the gym and preparing for this fight against Vergil Ortiz. It's an excellent fight. I have no issues with the fight. I mean, there's no other fight, outside of just Boots maybe getting in the mix with those two. I actually have no issues with this fight. This fight is good, and they should still go on. Now, one thing I read in a report, though, that was actually, I actually like that I heard, and I feel like this is what promoters should be doing with their fighters. That's what the promoters should be doing. They should be giving them the fights that they want, and they should be paying them a fair amount of money, a realistic, fair amount of money, where, these guys can be satisfied with the fights that they're taking, And I read in there that because being that Stanionis is the champion and the rules is he's supposed to get 75% of the split, all right, whereas Ortiz is supposed to get 25%. Now, I believe Golden Boy won the bid for like $2.3 million, and that basically meant that Vergil Ortiz was only going to get like $500 something thousand, like $500,000 for this fight, even though Vergil is the much bigger star. In a report that I read, there was a line that I read that Oscar is going to be paying him much more than that to cover, the low amount of the purse split that he's going to be receiving, even though he's the bigger star. Like, stuff like that, I like. I like when a promoter says, all right, you know what? We know this is the rule. We don't want to fall back and miss this opportunity because of this rule. So I'm going to come out of pocket and pay to make sure you get this opportunity. And I think more promoters, if it makes financial sense, I know every fighter is not going to get that because maybe they don't have the name like that, or maybe they don't generate the amount of money. So not everyone is going to get that, And I think that's the problem in the arguments that all of us boxing fans make. We sit here and make these arguments about who's deserving of what amount of money and stuff like that. Well, in this scenario, Vergil shouldn't be getting just 25% of the purse. Even though I know he's not the champion, it is what it is. It's like it just happened with Regis Prograis, and Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez was like, I'm not getting enough money to take that kind of fight, even though I'm the mandatory for that title that Prograis just won against Cepeda. I need a little bit more. I'm used to getting this amount of money for this fight. I'm not going to get a shorter percentage when I've grossed this amount of money for these amount of fights compared to you, in comparison to you. Maybe they could have worked things out instead of him just saying no. All right, maybe they could have worked on trying to make the split work out a little better. Regis Prograis is the champion. Maybe Top Rank could have came out and say, hey, I'm willing to pay you more to take this fight if you really want this opportunity. But I don't know if Ramirez would have been a favorite going into that fight. So the circumstances are a little different, where Ortiz is probably at the end. I don't know what the odds will be, but I would expect Ortiz to be a slight favorite in that fight. Not a heavy favorite, but I would expect him to be a favorite to win that fight. All right, so all the circumstances is not always going to be the same, but promoters are capable of doing these things. They are. If it makes financial sense and the investment is worth it, they will do it. And as you can see, Oscar clearly saw that, Ortiz getting 25% of the purse against Stanionis, it's not going to work. I'm going to have to come out of pocket with this one and pay you more in order to make up for the money that you're not making when you're the star of this fight. All right. All right. So this going down the list here. Malik Scott, Deontay Wilder's trainer and friend. He's come out and said that most likely Wilder is gonna fight Andy Ruiz. Most likely he's gonna come back and fight, which is what we all expect. I mean, it makes sense. Andy Ruiz seems to be really wanted. I mean, even Andy has come out and said, like, who would you want me to fight? So it's been a little bit like we all expect the fight, but for whatever reason, it seems like Wilder doesn't seem as interested in taking a fight. Why? I don't know. I'm sure it's a fight that Al would want, being that they're both PBC fighters and they've both been pay-per-view fighters. Maybe they want to build a fight up a little bit more. Maybe each have another fight. But Malik Scott says he's most likely to fight Andy Ruiz, but he may face a mystery opponent. There's another option out there. Now, me going down the heavyweight charts and looking at all the names and me trying to figure out who can Wilder face in replacement of Andy Ruiz. Who would be someone that I can see them lining up with Wilder that can be better or either as good, or maybe, I don't know. I don't know where they were going with it. But if you're not going to fight Andy Ruiz, I think the only other person that people may consider to be more dangerous right now that's seasoned, other than Andy Ruiz, is Joe Joyce. And I just can't see that one happening. I mean, if it were to happen, if I found out tomorrow that Wilder's taking on Joe Joyce next, that'll be crazy. Without finding Andy Ruiz first, I just don't feel like that's realistic. Because Joyce is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. I mean, he could arguably beat maybe some of the former champions at this point. He's already beaten one in Joseph Parker and Burmester Vern, But I mean, top tier former champions, I mean. I'm trying to think of other fights that people would like. If he doesn't fight Andy Ruiz. I think people would like the Dillian White fight, because that fight never occurred and people wanted it for a while. I think people would like that fight. Derek Chisora, it wouldn't be something that we demand more right now because Derek is coming off the loss to Tyson Fury, the third loss to him. And you just don't, no one's really asking for it, but it wasn't a bad fight at one point. I mean, I've seen a couple of comments still from people saying that they think Derek Chisora would be tough for Wilder. And I don't blame them, but if you're not going to fight Andy Ruiz, who exactly would you fight that people would want to pay for a pay-per-view to see you fight? And outside of those guys, I mean, look, they have Frank Sanchez over there. Do you really want to fight that guy? Seems like high risk, low reward. Very good boxer. Very slick fighter. Do you want to fight that guy in place of Andy Ruiz? I can't really see that happening, So I don't know. But they said a mystery opponent. I don't know who that would be. Maybe they'd get Jermaine Franklin in there because he looked good against White. And maybe they just want another fight. I don't know. Maybe they want one more before fighting Andy Ruiz. But they've shown a lot of interest in fighting and wanting to fight Anthony Joshua lately. Both teams have. And that'll be my final topic of the day. When it comes to Wilder and Anthony Joshua, Hearn has come out and said, like, look, and this is just a little old now. This is like maybe a week or two old, but he's come out and he said, like, look, I know, people want the Wilder fight now, but Joshua's coming off of 2 consecutive losses. All right, so it's not realistic for us to just throw him in there with Wilder right now. Wilder just had a tune-up. I think it's fair for Joshua to have a tune-up before the fight. It's fair. I don't have a problem with them having a tune-up. Wilder had lost to Fury twice. He got stopped twice. And, he went on and he went on to beat Robert Helenius in one round. I think the Ruiz fight should be the fight. All right, that's just my opinion. But I think Joshua is fair for Joshua to have a tune-up. Have a tune-up, and it seems like Eddie seems to want to have like a tune-up, like a top 15 guy, and then maybe possibly having a Dillian White rematch before Wilder. So based on what Eddie is saying, it seemed like we're not going to get Wilder until another 2 fights. So if that's the case, maybe Wilder might say, all right, well, you know what? And I'm not saying everything evolves around Anthony Joshua. His may not, but maybe he's saying like, oh, you know what? Let's both, maybe the pay-per-view numbers weren't great with Wilder and Helenius. It wasn't great with Andy Ruiz and Luis Ortiz. Let's both have one more fight before we get it on. And then we can get it on and then go to fight, Joshua or Fury or whoever's still available at the top tier at that time, Usyk. Maybe they're doing that. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm reading these articles and I'm telling you how I feel. But Hearn is not expecting to throw AJ. He wants to have the Wilder fight. He did say that. But he did not say, like, we're going to have it on his first one back. It's not going to happen. And probably not his second one back neither. All right? But it says that they have been in talks. He's been in talk with Shelly Finkel. And they're moving towards maybe having a fight at some point. I think they should have a fight at this point. It's nothing else to lose. You both lost fights at this point. You've both been stopped. You both lost fights recently. Might as well. It's nothing to be afraid of. You both are not undefeated anymore. Like, it's over. All right? But the IBF, and when it comes to Fury and Usyk, the IBF was trying to mandate Filip Hrgovic to fight, for Usyk to defend his title, his IBF title for Filip Hrgovic, against Filip Hrgovic, even though we're leading towards a Tyson Fury undisputed fight. And the IBF recently canceled the mandatory order. All right, so it's good news, because I've said to you guys before, I know now these sanctioning bodies are trying to put pressure on Usyk. He holds 3 of the titles, and I know he had 2 fights with Joshua. And it's been around since he actually, no one has defended. I believe Joshua defended his IBF title against Usyk, or he defended one of those titles against Usyk. I think Usyk was a mandatory. All right, I think he actually was. I'm glad the IBF, who's very strict, is canceling that Mando. And from what I read, the WBA is supposed to follow suit with Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois is the WBA regular champion, and I believe Joe Joyce is the WBO Mando. All right. I think for this period, I think I would like for the sanctioning bodies to let these guys fight for undisputed, and then you can strip or mandate any other fight you want. I think it's a very ridiculous for Daniel Dubois to even have this being this close to a title opportunity after losing to Joe Joyce just a few fights ago, and Joe Joyce hasn't even had a title shot. I just think that's just ridiculous, man. Joe Joyce has earned a title shot way more than Daniel Dubois. The WBA and that funny business that they do, they made like Bogdan Denu against Dubois in order to get a mandatory shot at the WBA world title. Bogdan Denu did nothing. Why would you make that order? Yeah, I don't know what I mean. I don't have nothing against Daniel Dubois, but the way that they're just moving him is real funny to me. All right, but Anthony Joshua, and this is the most recent news and the big news. Anthony Joshua has found his new trainer. It hasn't been announced yet officially, but he's found his new trainer. Many people believe it's Derek James. I believe it's Derek James. I actually hope it's Derek James. I just gave him trainer of the year. He's met with Derek James before, when he had the training tour in America last year before agreeing to work with Robert Garcia. All right, he was with Robert Garcia for the rematch against Usyk, and he's coming to America. Eddie Hearn has announced that Joshua is going to come to America and stay here and prepare for his next fight. And I like that. I think that is something that a lot of Joshua fans have said for years. Maybe it's time for him to get out of his comfort zone. Because this is the thing. Joshua is 32 years old now. I don't know how much he can improve at this point. But one thing I will say that might help him is getting out of his comfort zone. I know Robert Garcia has had a lot to say about Anthony Joshua recently. Maybe that's part of the reason on why things and the relationship with them the chemistry wasn't really that good. Maybe it's because of some of the comments he's made to the public. But I like Derek James as a coach. I like the fact that Derek James is all about building a relationship and a good rapport with his fighters. I said this recently. He doesn't have a lot of fighters in his camp. All right. We know Frank Martin is there. We know that Jamel Charlo and Errol Spence is there. And that's it. But I did see a video, and I posted it on YouTube. And if you go and watch the recent interview on the Porter Way podcast with Sean Porter, they interviewed Derek James over the weekend during the Tank Hector Garcia fight. And they asked him, like, hey, how many fighters are you training? He's like 3, he's only got 3 fighters, and there was a comment by the co-host of Sean Porter. I don't know his name, but I think either one of him or Sean Porter said something like, no, you got 4 fighters. All right, you got 4. And he's like, yeah, I got 4. But they didn't say who the 4th fighter was. So that made me feel like maybe it's Anthony Joshua. For him saying there is a 4th fighter, but them not announcing who the 4th fighter is, maybe it is Derek James. They met before, and they show him Anthony Joshua in gym with Jamel Charlo, and they were hitting the mitts, and it seemed like it was cool. I mean, why did he choose to go with Robert? I don't know. Maybe I have no idea why he didn't stick with Derek James. I know Derek James works differently. Maybe Derek James wants to be with his fighter full time like the rest of them. He's with Errol, he's with Jamel, he's with Frank. So Joshua probably would have had to change everything in order to be with Derek James, because that's the way Derek James work. So maybe that was the reason why, I also heard Virgil Hunter, and I spoke on this before. Not trying to take anything away from Virgil Hunter, but when it comes to results, we've seen better results with Derek James in recent years, and again, not every coach is gonna have the same results. I know Derek James was working with Marcus Brown leading up to the Arthur Beterbiev fight. Marcus lost the fight, but doesn't mean that Derek James is a bad fighter. It's just that maybe Arthur. I mean, it's so much a coach could do. You're the fighter. You have to get in the ring yourself anyway. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that that AJ is going to go and beat everybody now that he's with Derek James. But Derek James has proven. He's more proven, and he's getting wins. And we see that fighters are improving while being with him. So with that being said, I like the Derek James decision, and I like the idea of AJ staying in America and changing things up and getting used to just something different. If he wants to improve, and he said it in interviews, and I think if his hardcore fans want him to improve, maybe he has to change something, completely change something. And maybe being in America will help him change and grow and and stuff. Maybe it will change, or maybe he ends up being the same guy. He's not young, so he's still learning, right? And I said that in the Usyk rematch, I saw improvements in the fight. I know he was hard on himself. I know he went on that rant after the fight. And I'm sorry, he's 33. He's not 32. He's 33. So, you want to make a last strong run, and with that, if changing your environment completely, changing your coach completely, you got to do what you have to do for you, and maybe this helps. Maybe those few things that was an issue for him in previous fights, maybe Derrick James can work on those things. I think the one thing that I wonder, though, let's just say it is Derrick James, because I'm talking as if I don't know if it's Derrick James. I think it's Derrick James. I don't know, so let's make that clear. It has not been officially announced yet, right? And before I sign out or log off, I want to make sure it's not, because I don't want the news to get announced while I'm on here, and then I just did this long video for no reason. All right, I don't see anything online, but if it is Derrick James and he does, have some success with Derrick, and Joshua ends up staying with Derrick, I wonder how, if there's going to be a conflict of interest, like if Derrick James is in the corner of AJ if he were to fight Deontay Wilder, being that Derrick James is the coach of the PBC fighters, top PBC fighters like Jamel Charlo and Errol Spence, and also Frank Martin on the come up. Errol is a big is definitely a supporter of Deontay Wilder. Would that even matter? Just a thought, not trying to ruffle any feathers or anything. I just thought about that. This is one of those things I thought about. Like, AJ is on that other side. You get what I'm saying? Like a boxing fan. I'm not talking about him just being a UK fighter, but he's on that other side of the fan base. AJ is on that. He's actually at the top of that other side of, he's with Eddie. He's with Matchroom. He fights on the zone. And Wilder's on this side. He's PBC. He's Al Heyman. Derrick James is the coach of PBC Al Heyman fighters. I wonder how that would work. Interesting. And last thing, Joshua. The rumor is, the most recent rumor is he's going to be coming back and facing off against Dempsey McKean. Now, I was able to get a few minutes to check up this guy because I never heard of him. He's from Australia. Very tall fighter. Southpaw fighter. Quick hands. Moves extremely well. Does definitely remind me of Otto Wallin. Excuse me, a little bit of Usyk. He does move well. He is quick and tall. And Joshua, there's photos of him sparring. They're very familiar with each other. Similar to Robert Helenius. It's just that McKean hasn't beat anyone that's notable yet. I think I looked up his resume and I saw that Jonathan Rice was probably the best win on his resume. And I like Jonathan Rice. I saw some of that fight. I saw like the remaining rounds, or I skimmed through the fight and then I saw the stoppage. He did stop Jonathan Rice. Not the biggest puncher, but fundamentals are on point. And he's pretty quick and he moves well. I don't think he's an easy fighter to beat. He is very tall and rangy as well. He knows how to control this as well. He puts his punches together. I couldn't find many flaws with the guy, honestly. For a tune-up, he's a pretty good tune-up. All right? I don't have a problem with him. I don't have a problem with him. I think he would have been great leading up to another Usyk fight. Fighting another southpaw, but I don't have a problem with the fight. I don't have a problem. It's just that I eventually want AJ to go right back to where he left off, and hopefully we get a Wilder or Fury fight. So as far as a tune-up, you coming off of losses, I didn't make any complaints when Wilder was fighting Robert Helenius. Now Robert was coming off the Kanowski wins, which was great wins, 2 wins back-to-back. But as far as stylistically, he was a nightmare for Wilder. And I mean going into that fight. He was just, you already know he was going to get clipped. What I see in this guy, in his style, and McKean does have some good technique, some good abilities in there, and he's undefeated. And he reminds me of Otto Wallin, who proved to be good. We didn't really care for Wallin fighting Fury until the fight went down, and we seen Fury had a cut that was big enough for them to stop a fight. They didn't stop the fight, and Fury did win the fight clear, but Wallin gave him a good fight, and then he also went on to fight and beat Dominic Brazil. This guy looks pretty good, all right? Do I think he could beat AJ? I don't think he could beat AJ, but I don't think he's an easy touch, really. And I'm just basing it on the eye test. So definitely look him up. Look up the Jonathan Rice win, which is the fight that I saw. He's definitely a good defensive fighter. All right. But we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. That's the rumor that's going around right now. That's the rumor. Might not be true, but that's the rumor that's going around right now. All right. Anyway, think I covered everything today. Please, again, make sure you subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, share the video, and I'm out of here. Y'all have a good one. Oh, and I will be back next video. F.A. Ajaba against Stephen Shaw breakdown. I haven't done any full study yet, but I got you guys. All right, so be on the lookout for that. Liam Smith against Chris Eubank Jr. That breakdown is already out. Be sure to check that out, and I'll be back live to discuss more boxing real soon. All right, I'll see you guys. Peace.